Bonjour and good morning. Welcome to WASA Distance Education and PLAR English. And today in class, we're going to get started in lesson 4. So that means, of course, that you need to have finished up everything in lessons 1, 2, and 3 by now, hopefully, so that you can focus on what we're going to be covering in lesson 4. So this is week 8, so only 2 weeks of classes left in term 1A, so that's this week and next week. And then we have our admin week, so that'll be the opportunity for you to finish up whatever it is you're working on and write the culminating activity in order for you to be finished this term. If you're not finished this term, you can continue to work on it into term 1B. Okay, so you don't have to, you won't be withdrawn at the end of this term. But next term, PLAR Math will be on the radio. But you can still continue to work on your PLAR English if you're not finished with it. Okay, so just a few reminders that I usually start off with. So participation can be on radio or by using Zoom. So radio, you just call into our studio. Zoom, you have to use the internet and log on. The instructions for joining classes are in your study guide, or you can contact your DEC or me to join a class. All PLAR English students are welcome to attend classes, so it doesn't matter if you signed up for radio Zoom classes or if you signed up for IL. The radio Zoom classes cover the material in the lessons. The lessons for IL and radio Zoom are the same. So the stuff that we cover during the radio Zoom classes is the same thing that you will have as an IL student. So like I said, all students can attend classes. To contact me, you can use email, phone, or you can send me a message on Facebook, whatever works best for you. And students who were working on the PLAR last year can keep working on the key questions and continue to submit them. The classes from last year are still available on YouTube and are updated as I record new classes. So the classes from the PLAR English classes from last year, which would have been term 2A, are still available on YouTube. So if you need help with something that we haven't covered yet in this term so far, then you can view the classes from last year on YouTube, and it's the same thing for the math. If you're working on the math right now and you need some extra help, you can view the classes from last year. They are still available on YouTube. Just I guess a reminder for PLAR students, if you want to, you can try writing the culminating activity instead of doing the lessons and key questions. So if you feel confident, if you're good at math or English, science or history or geography, any of the 5 subjects in the PLAR, junior PLAR, if you feel like you can just do the culminating activity and pass it without having to do the lessons and the key questions, you can try that. You'll need to contact your DEC, our PLAR counselor here at WASA, or myself or Jovi, and we can send out the culminating activity to you. If you pass the culminating activity, then you just move on to your next subject. You don't have to do the lessons or the key questions. If you don't pass the culminating activity, then you will have to do the lessons and complete the key questions before you can attempt the culminating activity again. Okay, so keep that in mind. In your lessons, if you choose to do the lessons, there are support questions and there are key questions. So the support questions are the practice questions that you do before you do the key questions. So the support questions are scattered throughout the lesson. So you'll read a section, there will be a support question. Do that support question and then go to near the end of the lesson, right before the key questions, you will find the answers to the support questions. So you can check your answers against the answers that are there. If you're doing really well with the support questions and you get most of the answers correct, then you can move on to the key questions. If, however, you are not doing well with the support questions, you're getting most of them wrong, or you're not getting it, then you need to go back and reread the lesson, contact me for help, or watch the classes again for help. Then you can try the support questions again and then move on to the key questions. Okay, once you've done a support question, it will tell you go to the key question or go to key question 1 or 2 or whatever at the end of lesson 1. So then you move on to the key questions. Okay, for submitting your work, there are several different ways to do that. The first way is to give it to your DEC, and then your DEC will send it out to us here at WASA in Sioux Lookout. If your DEC is away, you don't have a DEC, then you can submit your own work. And to do that, there are again several different ways. So you can scan and email your own work to studentwork@nnec.onca, and CC it to me. Or if you have access to a fax machine, you can fax your work to us. If you are submitting your own work, be sure to write your name, the subject, and your teacher's name on your work. And you should put your name on every page so that in case it comes out and it gets mixed up with another student's work, then we will know that this doesn't belong, with whatever you're doing. Okay, so Jovi is asking me, before I continue on so I don't forget it, to announce that there will be a PLAR geography class today at 1 o'clock. Okay, so that's a makeup class for the one that she missed last week. So PLAR geography class today at 1 o'clock. Okay, so I'll try to remember to announce that again at the end of my class. So the next thing is you can, if you don't have access to a fax machine or a scanner, then you can use your smartphone to take photos of your work or to scan your work. So most smartphones have a built-in scanner, so you can either take photos of your work or you can scan your work and then you can email it to that same email address, studentwork@nnec.on.ca, and CC it to me, or you can send it using Facebook Messenger. Okay, so that's another way of submitting your work. You can also, if you're in Sioux Lookout, you can use our outdoor mailbox, which is located in the parking lot close to the post office, so on the side facing the post office, or you can just knock on the front door and give it to whoever answers the door. You can also use Google Docs to do your work, and then you can send me the link. Make sure that if you are using Google Docs and you are sending the link, that you make sure that it is shareable with me. Okay, I have received work a few times and it says that I do not have access and I have to request access. So make sure that you check all that before you send it. And then the last way is to use Google Classroom to join the classes, to do your work. Okay. So let's first of all review what we talked about in our last class. So last week we had a class, a makeup class on Friday because we only had one class last week originally. So instead of just having one class, we had a class on Wednesday and then we had an extra class on Friday. So on Friday we talked about practical writing, we talked about writing a resume, and we also talked about doing a formal email. So, just a review of a resume. So, writing a resume, of course, is something that you do if you are applying for a job or if you want to get information about a job. So, some of the top resume tips are, so first of all, make sure your resume is easy to skim read. So, we don't want it to be complicated, and most employers do not spend a whole lot of time reading resumes. They take a quick look at them to see if you are qualified. Okay, if you don't have information in there about your qualifications, it's probably just going to get tossed. So get the most out of the limited time employers spend deciding whether to accept or reject your resume. So things to remember. First of all, align your information to the left rather than centering your text. So if you look at this text that's written here, everything is what we call left aligned. So it's not centered on the page so that everything is in the middle of the page. It's got a left alignment. So when you're doing your resume, make sure you left align your work. Number 2, use your resume objective statement. Okay, we talked about an objective statement to concisely highlight your suitability. So an objective statement lets the employer know what it is you're looking for. If you're looking for a part-time job, full-time job, and if you're qualified. Number 3, put your headings and job titles in bold. So when you're identifying your work experience, make sure you spell out work experience and put it in bold font. Education, put it in bold font. Skills, put it in bold font. So any headings, make sure you bold them so that they stand out, so that if the employer is looking for something specific, they can skim and find it. Number 4, use digits. So that's numbers like 3 or 14 or whatever, rather than words for numbers. So generally when you're writing a letter or something like that, any number below 10 you would spell it out. So 1 you would put O-N-E, 2 T-W-O, 3 T-H-R-E-E, etc. But when you're doing a resume, you will use digits rather than words. So 1 would be the number 1, 2 would be the number 2. Number 5, use short bullet points to list your skills and experience. Okay, so you're not writing sentences on a resume. You're just using bullet points. So basically sentence fragments, because you're not, you don't need to write everything out. You want to make it short and easy to read. And number 6, keep your font and formatting consistent with sufficient white space. Okay, so don't choose your font. Don't, do your education skills using Comic Sans, and then your education using Comic Sans, and then your employment using Arial, and then your skills and abilities using Times New Roman. Keep it all consistent. So the only thing that's going to change is if you put something in bold. Other than that, it stays the same. And make sure that you have enough white space around your resume. Don't cram everything in. So the top 5 resume tips, writing tips. Number 1, the layout and format is important. So select a traditional font that is easy to read and use black type against white paper. Okay, don't use colored paper with like a white font or something like that. Always black on white. And something that's easy to read. So Times New Roman or Arial, something like that. Number 2, you have 15 to 20 seconds to shine. That's about all the time somebody's going to spend on your resume. Highlight your key accomplishments and most relevant skills within the top half of your resume, preferably using bullets. Number 3, list your experience in reverse chronological format. Okay, so this is like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, but we do it backwards, 4, 3, 2, 1. So list your present or most recent job first. So what it is you're doing now, what you're working at now, or the job that you just finished working at. So working backwards unless you have a lapse in employment. So if you've been off work for 3 or 4 years or whatever. In that case, rearrange your employment history to reflect work relevancy instead. So include only jobs that are relevant to the position you're applying for. Number 4, customize your resume to each position. So in your summary statement, remember this is what goes right at the very beginning of your resume. At the top, it's just a little statement. Immediately state the position to which you are applying for and tailor your resume to reflect your experience for that position accordingly. Okay, so your summary statement might be engineer for the past 10 years seeking employment as head engineer working on this project or something like that. Okay, so make sure you state what it is you are applying for. And then number 5, quantifying your accomplishments. So identify appropriate metrics and include professional achievements that are value added and specific to each role. So if you're into sales, then you might say increased sales of company XYZ by 50% last year or something like that. Okay, so that's what it means by quantifying. Okay, so then the next thing we looked at was writing an email. So when you're writing a formal email, It's a lot different from if you're writing an email to someone that you know. So formal email is going to someone that you don't know very well, or someone in a position of authority. Okay, so you're going to start off first of all with your subject line. So your subject line, in your subject line, you're going to concisely convey your purpose for writing. So why are you writing? Goes in the subject line. Thank you, assistant executive interview. So thanking someone for the interview. It could be a meeting you might put in December 1st at 1 o'clock p.m. important meeting or something like that. So it's not going to be very long, but it's going to be very specific. The next thing is your greeting. Always including a greeting. Don't just jump right into your body of your letter right away. Include a greeting. Dear Ms. Doe. And we generally start with dear. If you know the person's name, make sure you use it. Ms. Doe, Mr. Martin, whatever. If you don't know the person's name and you're writing to like a professor, just say dear professor if you don't know the person's name. If they have a title, a doctor, professor, something like that, make sure you use that. Okay, the length of your letter, keep it as concise as possible. Don't wander on in your email. Make sure that you stay on the point. So I enjoyed speaking with you today about the assistant account executive position at the Smith Agency. The job seems to be an excellent match for my skills and interest. The creative approach to account management that you described confirmed my desires to work with you. In addition to my enthusiasm, I will bring to the position strong writing skills, assertiveness, and the ability to encourage others to work cooperatively with the department, etc., etc. So very specific. Don't use emoticons, okay? You don't want to put smiley faces. It doesn't look professional. Your font style, avoid ornate, playful, or colored fonts. Stick with something like Arial's, the basic one, or Times New Roman, or what most people use. Don't use all capital letters because that makes it look like you're yelling at someone. Okay, make sure that you use capital letters appropriately. And of course, check for your spelling and grammar before you send an email. Okay, make sure that everything looks right. Strong writing is an error. So it should be 2 words, strong writing. Okay, I appreciate the time you took to interview me. I am very interested in working for you and look forward to hearing from you regarding this position, not thus position. And then your ending, of course, generally, sincerely, your name, and you can leave a place for a signature. You can also other sign-offs for a formal email would be something like, of course, sincerely, yours truly, those types of things. So the most frequent email sign-offs, thanks. So this one is more informal. Best would be informal. Unless you did best regards, it would be formal, but just regards is informal. Sincerely is formal. Take care would be informal. Thanks so much, more informal. Cheers, definitely informal. All the best, informal. Respectfully would be formal. Sincerely yours would be formal. The others are more informal. Okay, so make sure you have a formal ending with a formal email. Okay, so that was it for lesson 3. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to start with lesson 4, and lesson 4, the focus is going to be on summarizing. We're going to be talking about a few other things as well. So today, we're going to definitely talk about audience and purpose, and we're going to start talking about graphic text, hopefully, but we probably won't have time to get through the whole thing. But we will finish lesson 4 this week. Okay, so learning goals for lesson 4, I will learn about the purposes for writing, and I will write an effective summary. So now that we have thought about how to read and respond to literary texts, let's look at the reasons why people write. In this lesson, we will explore different purposes for writing. You will also have an opportunity to practice identifying the purpose, audience, and tone for different texts. It's easy to see that we read and write and communicate for different purposes and different audiences at different times. Your subject, so what it is you're writing about, your audience, who it is you're writing for, and your purpose for writing, so why are you writing it, to inform, to persuade, to entertain, all influence your choice of form. That is, the type of writing. It could be a report, a letter, a tweet. Style and tone, so how you say what you say. In this lesson, you will also learn some strategies for writing an effective summary. What is a summary? Essentially, a summary is a short text that outlines the main points of a longer text. Okay, so I'm going to leave the rest of the stuff out, summaries, but because we will be talking about them later on. So on the next page, page 3, is information on reasons for writing, so the purpose. Page 4 goes through the common purposes. Page 5, a little bit more on purposes for writing. Page 6, finding the author's purpose. Page 7 is your support question for purpose. Page 8, talking about audience, who is my audience. Page 9, talking about how audience and purpose are connected. Page 10, support question number 26, so practicing audience and purpose. So make sure you do those support questions, as I mentioned, before you start the key questions. Okay, so let's talk about purposes for writing. So why do we write? Why we write is our purpose. And there are different purposes for writing. So the primary reason, obviously, for writing anything is to communicate with others, to stimulate interest or action from the reader. So you want to communicate a message. You might be making a poster to let somebody know that there's a bake sale. So you're writing to inform people. So you want to communicate that message to them. So again, whenever we write, we're always trying to communicate something. You may also use writing to help you to reflect on your experiences and learn from them. So writing to record. While in school, a key way of assessing the progress of learning of students is via the written work they produce. So you do something, you hand it in your teacher corrects it and sends it back. When we write, therefore, we are either writing for ourselves or we're writing for others. So when we write for ourselves, it helps us to think. So you might be jotting down, writing notes in class, learn and understand. So teachers talking about something, you're writing down notes that might help you remember, that will help you learn about it, that will help you understand. Writing for ourselves is a private affair, though it may be shared with others. So you might also be writing a journal, which you don't share with anyone else. It's just for you. Writing for others. So when we write for others, it is usually for assessment, so handing something into your teacher, or publication for a wider readership. So you might be writing, like I said, making a poster, talk about an upcoming bake sale. The benefits of writing. So we've already talked about this a little bit. Writing has a number of key benefits. So first, it is fixed and therefore more permanent. So rather than just saying it and it could be forgotten 5 seconds later, it's written, it's there, you can go back to it. So you can keep coming back to a previous piece of writing. Remember that you do not have to submit your first draft. So when you're doing writing for school, or you're making a poster to advertise something, you don't have to use your first draft. Okay, you can look at it and go, oh, I missed something out there. And then you can change it, fix it. So you don't always have to use your first draft. Writing offers you time and space to redraft and refocus your message. In this way, perhaps it is easier than spoken communication. When speaking, as I mentioned, you have to think of words and immediately release them to the audience, and once spoken, there is no opportunity to edit them before they are heard. So you're talking to somebody, so the person you're talking to is your audience. You might say something, you might not have a whole lot of time to think about it, and you might say something, and then after you say it, you might go, darn, I didn't mean to say that. And it's too late because it's already out there. With writing, that doesn't happen. Okay, you can write it down and then you can read it over and fix it up before you put it out there. The process of writing is something that you can constantly learn from, and cumulative feedback and reflection on your writing can help you to develop as a writer. Writing sometimes has more impact than other communication channels. So as I mentioned, if you're talking to someone, once it's said, once it comes out of your mouth, the person who's listening might remember it for 5 seconds. Okay, they might not be interested. They might not even hear you, depending on what they're doing. So writing sometimes has more impact because it's permanent. It's there. Through writing, you can select language to influence the thoughts and actions of your reader in particular ways, guiding them through your evidence and argument to convince them of your analysis and conclusion. Okay, so purpose for writing. The author's purpose is the reason they decided to write about something in the first place. So why? The different types of author's purposes. Now there are, a bunch of them, but we focus on the 3 main reasons, and the 3 main reasons are to persuade, to inform, and to entertain. Okay, so if we look at P, persuade, I, inform, E, entertain, we can use the acronym PI to help you remember the 3 main reasons: persuade, inform, entertain. So the different types of author's purpose. So persuade. When a text is written to persuade, it will aim to convince the reader of the merits of a certain point of view. With this type of writing, the author will attempt to persuade the reader to agree with this point of view and or subsequently take a particular course of action. So examples. Persuasive writing is most commonly the motivation behind essays, advertisements, and political writing such as speeches and propaganda. To identify when the author's purpose is to persuade, you should ask if you feel the writer is trying to get you to believe something or take a specific action. You should learn to identify the various tactics and strategies used in persuasive writing, such as repetition, so saying the same thing over and over, various types of supporting evidence, hyperbole, so exaggeration, attacking opposing viewpoints, forceful phrases, emotive imagery, and photographs, etc. So here's an example of writing to persuade. It is recommended that parents read to their children every day, starting as early as 6 months of age. When you read with your children, you are preparing them to be lifelong learners. They are also more likely to be successful in school and in their future career. So, turn off the television and pick up a book. So this is writing to persuade. They're trying to get you to do something. And at the end it says, turn off the television, pick up a book. They want you to read. So the author is making an emotional plea to do the right thing, read. Also, the last sentence encourages the reader to take action. So trying to get you to do something. Okay, writing to inform. When an author's purpose is to inform, they usually wish to enlighten their readership about a real world topic. So they want to give you information. Often, they will do this by providing lots of facts. Informational texts are geared toward imparting information to the reader with the purpose of educating them on a given topic. So, for example, school books are written with the express purpose of informing the reader. Added to textbooks, we also have encyclopedias, give you information, recipe books, and newspapers. They're all designed to give information. In the process of informing the reader, the author will make use of facts. One surefire way to spot the intent to inform. However, when the author's purpose is persuasion, they will also be likely to provide the reader with some facts in an attempt to convince the reader of the merits of their particular case. So if they're trying to persuade you to do something, they might use some facts in there. But there's still, the main difference between the two different ways facts are employed is that when the intention is to inform, facts are presented only to teach the reader. When the author's purpose is to persuade, they will commonly mask their opinions among the facts. Okay, so writing to inform. Just giving information. Calligraphy is a form of handwriting. A special pen must be used. Letters are formed using up and down strokes. Old documents are usually written in this form. Even today, special documents such as diplomas and certificates are written in calligraphy. So, Just giving you information about calligraphy. Not saying everybody should practice calligraphy or all documents should be written using calligraphy. Not trying to persuade you to do anything. Just giving you the information. The author wants the reader to learn about the art of writing calligraphy. Does not express any opinions, only shares the facts with the reader. Okay, writing to entertain. So when an author's chief purpose is to entertain the reader, they will endeavor to keep things as interesting as possible. So if you're trying to entertain somebody, you want the information to be entertaining. You want it to be interesting. Okay? Things happen in books that are written to entertain, whether in the form of an action-packed plot, inventive characterizations, or sharp dialogue. So we find entertaining examples in science fiction, so stories, romance, and fantasy. When a writer is attempting to entertain or amuse the reader, they will use a variety of techniques to engage their attention. So they're going to try to do things to capture your attention. They may employ cliffhangers at the end of a chapter, for example. They may weave humor into their story, or even have characters tell jokes. In the case of a thriller, an action-packed scene may follow an action-packed scene as the drama builds to a crescendo. So writing to entertain, example, his face appeared in the window. Sarah knew he had been the cause of her waking at 3 in the morning. Was this just her imagination? Was she really seeing his shadowy, spooky figure lurking just outside? Crash! Suddenly the window shatters and Sarah bolts from her bedroom to her parents' room. Okay, so building excitement. The author is entertaining the reader with a spooky story. He is trying to create a mood of suspense in the story. So not giving any information there, just entertainment. Okay, writing to explain. When writers write to explain, they want to tell the reader how to do something or reveal to them how something works. So writing to explain is basically writing to inform. Okay, this type of writing is about communicating a method or a process. So writing with the purpose of explaining can be found in instructions, step-by-step guides, procedural outlines, and recipes. Often you will find this type of writing organized into bulleted or numbered points. As it focuses on telling the reader how to do something, often lots of imperatives will be used within the writing. Diagrams and illustrations are often used to reinforce the text explanations too. So again, writing to explain is the same as writing to inform. Writing to describe. Often writers will use words to describe something in more detail than can be conveyed in a photograph alone. So again, this can be writing to inform. Okay? For example, we can find lots of descriptive writing in obvious places like short stories, novels, and other forms of fiction where the writer wishes to paint a picture in the reader's imagination. We can also find lots of writing with the purpose of description in nonfiction too, in product descriptions or descriptive essays, for example. So this is also writing to entertain. Okay, so depending on what kind of a description you're writing, it could be to inform or it could be to entertain. In the case of fiction writing which describes, the reader will notice the writer using lots of sensory details in the text. Our senses are how we perceive the world, and to describe their imaginary world, writers will draw heavily on language that appeals to the senses. In both fiction and nonfiction, readers will notice the writer will rely heavily on adjectives in their writing. So writing to describe, more of entertainment writing. Okay, so those are the reasons for writing. So in particular, remember PIE, persuade, inform, entertain. Okay, some might overlap, so it might be informative but also persuasive, or informative but also entertaining. So you have to, sometimes it could be one or the other. So you have to think, okay, what is the main purpose of this writing? Okay, so audience. Audience matters. Whether you've thought about it consciously or not, you always write to an audience. So you're always writing for someone, depending on what you're writing for. So if you're writing about a bake sale, your audience is going to be people who are interested in bake sales. If you're writing something for school, then your audience obviously is going to be your teacher. If you're writing a journal entry, your audience is going to be you. Okay? Maybe you're writing a speech. So your audience is going to be whoever you're presenting your speech to. It could be a group of classmates, could be a group of teachers, could be a hiring committee. Okay, so whether sometimes your audience is a very generalized group of readers, sometimes you know the individuals who compose the audience, and sometimes you write for yourself. Keeping your audience in mind while you write can help you make good decisions about what material to include, how to organize your ideas, and how best to support your argument. So you might say, well, isn't my instructor my audience? Yes, your instructor in most cases is your audience, because your instructor is going to be the person who's going to read and grade your essays. So you want to keep in mind what it is that your audience, your professor wants to know, or your teacher. However, when you write an essay with only your instructor in mind, you might not say as much as you should say, or say it as clearly as you should, because you assume that the person grading it knows more than you do and will fill in the gaps. This leaves it up to the instructor to decide what you're really saying, and she might decide differently than you expect. For example, she might decide that those gaps show that you don't know and understand the material. So you need to put down as much information as you can without going overboard with it. Thinking about your audience differently can improve your writing, especially in terms of how clearly you express your argument. The clearer your points are, the more likely you are to have a strong essay. How do I identify my audience? Use the following questions to help you identify your audience and what you can do to address their wants and needs. Okay, so first of all, ask yourself, who is your audience? Is it your teacher? Is it your classmates? Is it a group of parents? A group of other adults? Might you have more than one audience? If so, how many audiences do you have? List them. So maybe it's your teacher and your classmates. Does your assignment itself give any clue about your audience? So what is it you're doing? Your assignment can be an assignment for school, or it can be an assignment for work. It can be an assignment for a club or something you're part of. What does your audience need? What do they want? What do they value? What is most important to them? What are they least likely to care about? So anything that you don't think they're going to care about, you don't need to write about. What kind of organization would best help your audience understand and appreciate your argument? What do you have to say, or what are you doing in your research that might surprise your audience? What do you want your audience to think, learn, or assume about you? And what impression do you want your writing or your research to convey? All questions, good questions to ask yourself. Okay, how much should I explain? So this is kind of the hard part, because people will always ask, well, how long does my paragraph have to be? How many sentences do I have to write? But it depends on what it is you're writing. So if you're writing for your teacher, then you want to show your teacher that you know the material. But different assignments call for varying degrees of information. Different fields also have different expectations. The best place to start figuring out how much you should say about each part of your paper is in a careful reading of the assignment. So read the assignment carefully to find out what it is your teacher wants. The assignment may specify an audience for your paper. It might say you're writing to your MP, or you're writing for a professional journal, or you're writing to a group of specialists, or you're writing for your classmates. If the assignment doesn't specify an audience, you may find it most useful to imagine your classmates reading your paper rather than your instructor. If the assignment asks you to summarize something that you've read, then your reader wants you to include more examples from the text than if the assignment asks you to interpret the passage. If your assignment asks you to interpret or analyze the text, or an event or idea, then you want to make sure that your explanation of the material is focused and not so detailed that you end up spending more time on examples than on your analysis. Once you have a draft, Try your level of explanation out on a friend, a classmate, or your teacher. Get the person to read your rough draft and then ask her about what she did and didn't understand. Now is not the time to talk about proofreading stuff, so make sure she ignores those issues for the time being. So just reading for content the first time. So if your listener or reader has tons of questions, then you obviously didn't put enough information in there. If your reader seems confused, you need to explain more. If your reader looks bored and can repeat back to you more details than she should know to get your point, you probably explained too much. Sometimes it's not the amount of explanation that matters, but the word choice and the tone that you adopt. Your word choice and tone need to match your audience's expectations. So, depending on who you're writing for. So, if you are writing, researching on piranhas, and you find an article in National Geographic and another one in an academic journal for scientists. So National Geographic is written for a popular audience, so a general audience. Most people can read it. So you will see sentences like the piranha generally lives in shallow rivers and streams in South America. So very basic. The scientific journal, on the other hand, is written for scientists. So they're going to use more technical language because it's written for specialists. So generally you want your reader to know enough material to understand the points you are making. Okay, so think about who your audience is. Okay, reading your own drafts. So this is a big thing because a lot of people, once they write, they don't read it over to see what they've written because they think, okay, I know what I wrote. It's all there. I don't have to read it over. But you do. Writers tend to read over their own papers pretty quickly with the knowledge of what they are trying to argue already in their minds. So, yeah, I read it. Well, you just read it through, but you knew what you wanted to say. Reading in this way can cause you to skip over gaps in your written argument because the gap filler is in your head. So you know what you wanted to say. So when you're reading it, if you're reading it quickly, you fill in those gaps in your head, but you don't fill them in on paper. A problem occurs when your reader falls into these gaps. So your reader doesn't know what you wanted to say. So when they're reading it, there's holes in your writing. Your reader wants you to make the necessary connections from one thought or sentence to the next. When you don't, the reader can become confused or frustrated. Think about when you read something and you struggle to find the most important points or what the writer is trying to say. So putting yourself in the reader's position. Instead of reading your draft as if you wrote it and know what you meant, try reading it as if you have no previous knowledge of the material. Have you explained enough? Are the connections clear? This can be hard to do at first. Okay, so sometimes when we read our own writing, we just want to read it and get it done. But you have to be more careful about what you're writing. Lots of people don't read over what they write and then their message gets lost because it's too confusing for people. Like I've read tons of posts on Facebook and even emails that I have to read several times before I can understand what the people are trying to say. And sometimes then I don't even understand because there's too many gaps or they're not using correct punctuation or spelling or grammar or they're not following basically the rules of written language. So to read over your work, take a break from your work first. Okay, go work out, take a nap, take a day off, whatever. This is why your instructors encourage you to start writing more than a day before the paper is due. If you write the paper the night before it's due, you make it almost impossible to read the paper with a fresh eye. You don't have time. Next, try outlining after writing. So after you've written down what you want to write down, look at each paragraph separately. Write down the main point for each paragraph on a separate sheet of paper in the order you have put them. Okay, so just like a couple words or a couple phrases. Then look at your outline. Does it reflect what you meant to say in a logical order? Do you have everything in the right order? Are some paragraphs hard to reduce to one point? And if they are, why? Read your paper out loud. Listen to yourself. You'll see that it helps you slow down and really consider how your reader experiences your text. It will also help you catch a lot of sentence level errors such as misspellings and missing words, which can make it difficult for your reader to focus on your argument. Lots of times when you have a lot of misspellings and grammar mistakes and punctuation mistakes in your writing, people don't want to read it, and they won't read it. These techniques can help you read your paper in the same way your reader will and make revisions that help your reader understand your argument. Remember, we write to communicate, so make sure you're communicating the proper information. So text, tone, audience, and purpose, things we already talked about. So the text is, what kind of writing is it? Okay, what kind of writing are you doing? Narrative, are you telling a story? Is it an evaluation of something? Are you explaining something? Writing a review, a diary, a letter? So there's lots of different types of text. Tone. Is the tone of the text formal or informal? Okay, are you writing this to someone that you know really well, or is it someone you don't know very well? Formal writing is used when the text is aimed at a wide audience or if the writer doesn't know the reader and wants to impress him or her. Informal writing is quite easy to create but should only be used for specific audiences. Your audience, who is the text aimed at? Adults, children, teenagers, pensioners, men, women, teachers, professors, who? And then your purpose, why has the text been written? To argue, to explain, to evaluate, to persuade, to instruct, entertain, inform, describe, analyze, recount. Okay, what is the writer trying to do, or what are you trying to do? Okay, so let's go to this one actually. Practice with audience and purpose. Identify the correct audience and purpose for each excerpt. So the audiences, these are just some potential audiences: a town council, general public, homeowners, home internet users, parents, parents of young children, high school students, users of public transport, pregnant women. Purpose: to inform, to persuade, to entertain, or to explain. So number one, a politician's speech about how homes should be provided to families who cannot afford them. Okay, so it's a politician's speech about how homes should be provided to families who cannot afford them. So who would be interested in this? Could be a couple of different audiences. Could be the general public, because they want to know about this. Okay, they're interested. Could also be homeowners. They want to know about this information as well, because they want to know maybe these homes that are going to be provided to families who can't afford them, where they're going to go. Are they going to be in their neighborhood or whatever? Okay, and what's the purpose? It's a politician's speech, so chances are it's to persuade. Okay, politician speeches are usually to persuade, basically to persuade you to vote for them. Okay, so it's probably to persuade. Number two, a poem about a pack rat. A pack rat is a person who refuses to throw things away, even things that most people would consider garbage. So audience for this would be pack rats. It might, because it's a poem, it might be for students. Okay, or the general public. What is the purpose? It's a poem. Poems are generally to entertain. Okay, number three, your child is eligible for the H1N1 swine flu vaccine. Please phone your local health center to book an appointment. Evidence shows that children under 5 are most seriously affected by the H1N1 virus, and hospitalization is a serious risk. So this says your child, so the audience would be parents. And the purpose is to inform, to let parents know about that the swine flu vaccine is available and where they can get it from. Okay, it could also be to persuade. S-U-A-D-E. Okay, because it's telling parents that they should be bringing their child to get the H1N1 flu vaccine. Okay, an instructional booklet describing how to operate a smartphone. So the audience would be smartphone owners. Okay, and the purpose, to inform. Okay, so it's an instructional booklet. And point of an instructional booklet is to inform. Next, an internet ad banner telling you to click for a free iPhone. So the audience would be internet users, obviously, because if you don't use the internet, then you wouldn't know about this. And the purpose, telling you to click for a free iPhone, it's trying to persuade you to do something, to click. Number 6, a script for a school play about a girl who is unexpectedly rewarded for her kind deeds. Okay, so this is a school play. The audience would be other students in the school or possibly parents. Lots of times when there's a school play, parents are invited, and the purpose obviously is to entertain. Okay. All right, so that brings us to key question 15 in your lesson. First key question for lesson 4. So you're going to do basically what we just did. Read each of the following headlines, indicate the most likely audience and purpose for each topic headline listed below. So A, internet banner telling you to click for a free iPhone. We just did that one. Audience and purpose, and there might be more than one audience. There might be more than one purpose. So think about it very carefully.